Hello, welcome back. Nope. Hello, welcome back to COG 376. Today we're going to talk about probabilistic models of language, an introduction to a whole category of language models based on the basic principles of probability. So let's ease into probability first. For those who might be a little rusty, we can talk about the basics of how probability works. So, probability. Essentially, it's the likelihood, the possibility, the chance that something might occur. Life seldom has sure things. You can often represent the possibilities that things may happen in the world as probabilities. So, essentially, it's just the measure of how likely a given event is. And sometimes in the events, that event will have certain conditions that might trigger it or go with it as well. So let's just do a simple warm up. What are the odds that you'll drink something today? Pretty good, right? A lot would have to go wrong for you to drink nothing for an entire day. You'd get thirsty eventually. You might need to see a doctor if you're not getting thirsty ever. So you need this to survive. You're going to do this, right? What about the odds that you'll get struck by a meteorite falling from space? That's pretty bad. The odds are incredibly bad, right? This would be a pretty unlikely thing that could happen. It's not that it has never happened ever, and it's not that there is something preventing it from happening. It's technically possible, right? You go outside, it's open sky, something could strike you. But the reason you don't walk around in terror of being struck by a meteorite, and if you started to feel that way right now, ease off it, my friend. It's not going to happen. The reason you don't care about that is that the probability is vanishingly small. It is not even remotely likely. So you don't plan your life based on falling meteors, right? So how do we represent probability? It's a mathematical construct, after all. So the odds of any given thing can be represented using these ideas here. So the probability P of some event E is written as, it's a mathematical function, right? The probability of some event, right? The result is always going to be somewhere between 0 and 1. So 0 means E will never happen. It just can't. It's not even possible. Whereas 1 means E always occurs, right? And multiply by 100, you get your percentages. So basic concepts, coin flips are always used here. Basic odds of a coin flip on a fair coin. Probability of landing on heads. You might write that out like this. P of heads is the case that we're talking about, right? The event that we're talking about. The coin has come up heads. The way you compute this is you take the number of head sides that exist on the coin, divided by the number of total possible outcomes, total possible sides, which is heads and tails. So there's one head side and two sides total, including tails. That's half, which is 0.5, which is 50%. 50% chance, right? When you account for all the possible scenarios, they will always add up to 100%. So probability of heads plus probability of tails equals 100%. So, often when it comes to using probabilities, thinking about probabilities, finding out what a probability might be, the best way that we have is to check with the history, checking the observations we have from the past. So, for example, you may not know this, but a lot of times in weather predictions, when they say 30% chance of rain, that usually means something like, given all the days with similar conditions, so given the temperature, given the humidity, given the pressure, time of year, nearby radioactivity, all these kinds of things that they could work into this probability prediction, 30% of all of the ones that we have a historical record for had rain. That's what 30% chance means. There is more that goes into it. I'm not trying to throw shade here at meteorology. In fact, this is an impressive feat. But this is the way you think about this is a conditional probability. You might write it like this. We'll cover this again in a minute. So the probability of rain, given the temperature, humidity, pressure, blah, 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 mathematically, equals 30%. That's essentially what they're running to make these predictions. And to make more complex predictions, often you are running a lot of those in different cells all over the place. Now, weather predictions often, like I said, they're more complex. They can include, the patterns of the clouds, how different fronts typically interact, that kind of stuff that a little above our heads, both figuratively and metaphorically. Oh, wait, and literally, right? So, okay, so that's the idea. We often encounter these kinds of things. We use probabilities in some senses, but I want to go on a little cognitive tangent because, hey, this is a Cog Sci course. So, why do we find probability so frustrating sometimes, right? People get frustrated with weather. They say, only 20% chance of rain. Ugh, they lied. It's raining on me now. Here are the things, right? So for one thing, before meteorological modeling, weather was just a thing that happened. So we should be taking what we can get, okay? But on the second hand, left to our biology, left to our brains, left to our biochemistry, left to our cognition by default, we kind of suck at probabilities. We're not very good at just wielding them in a normal day-to-day capacity. I want to introduce you to Gerd Gigerenzer. He's involved in a sort of a human called bounded rationality work laboratory over in Germany at the Max Planck Institute. And in 2008, he ran a study of medical professionals' comprehension of diagnosis probabilities. So demonstrating, which you'll see in a minute, that even trained professionals who are experts in their fields can really screw up basic probabilistic understandings. This is not to speak ill of them, it's to speak ill of the whole human brain situation. And again, we do a lot of things great. Brains are really powerful, really interesting, but we're not cut out for every kind of math. So let's walk through it. In the study, essentially the idea was, assume you, the person here, this is all, it's a convention of gynecologists, it's a gynecology convention. Assume you conduct breast cancer screening using mammography in a certain region. You know the following information about women in this region, okay? Overall prevalence is, probability that any given woman is gonna have breast cancer is 1%. Something we've measured. It's 1 in 100 people might have this at any given time in this region. If a woman does have breast cancer, the probability that she tests positive is 90%. Okay, so that means the test is sensitive about 9 out of 10 times. It's pretty good at detecting if someone who does have the disease has the disease. It's good at it will flag it correctly. On the other hand, if a woman does not have breast cancer, the probability that she nevertheless tests positive is 9%. There's a 9% false positive rate. So, here's the question. This is the basis. Here's the question. A patient tests positive. Which of the following is the best advice? There are 4 options. The probability that she has breast cancer is about 81%. Here we're sort of combining the sensitivity and the false positive rate. Okay. How about B? Out of the 10 women with positive mammograms, about 9 are going to have breast cancer. This one's kind of going off of the idea that the probability that she tests positive is 90% if she has breast cancer. Okay, so given she has breast cancer, 90% chance that it's hit by the test. Okay, cool. C, on the other hand, out of 10 women with positive mammograms, about 1 is going to have breast cancer. That one's a little harder to reach. How might we get there? We'll talk about it in a minute. The probability that she has breast cancer is about 1%. Now that is the final option, and that's just sort of saying, well, it doesn't matter what the test says. The probability is still 1%, right? Here's how 160 gynecologists answer this question about this conditional probability situation. 75, so 47% picked A. 21 picked B, 13%. 34 picked C, 21%. And 30 picked D, 19%. Which one is correct? If you just went with the base, the fired shots from the gynecologists, you'd think A was correct. They've done some kind of combination. They've kind of computed, okay, well, there's a 90% chance it's right, but there's a false positive rate. I'll subtract that off, blah, blah, blah. The correct answer is C. Why? Why are the patient's odds only about 1 in 10 that she has breast cancer, given that she's tested positive? Here's the deal. 90% of those with breast cancer having positive results, right? So given the breast cancer, the positive result is 90%, is not the same as 90% of all positive results have breast cancer. Those are different conditional probabilities. It's a little counterintuitive, where, again, the reason it's not intuitive is that this is not in our intuition set. We're not really good at this thing. Here's what's going on. The reason you end up at 1 out of 10 is that the prevalence is only 1%, meaning by default, it's super unlikely any given patient has cancer. Whereas 9% of all people who take the test are going to get false positives. So 9% of a boatload of people who are taking these tests routinely, only 9% are going to get false positives, and then there's only 1% of the population who actually have it. So that brings us down, it kind of zooms us down to 9% of the full population have false positives, and 1% are going to have the actual disease. 1 out of 10. Testing positive increases that likelihood, right? It zooms us into a place where it's no longer a 1% chance, it's this 10% chance. But people forget to account for these overall base rates. So, further, are gynecologists are just incompetent? No. That's a dumb takeaway. Don't do that. The answer here is that we're not very good at this because there are certain mathematical overlaps that shouldn't be there when we deal with these probabilities. Raw percentages in particular are confusing to human brains, even for these well-trained experts. So Gigerenzer's trick that he introduces in the paper is to the idea of using familiarity, things that we can actually simulate a little better, natural frequencies, he calls them. So using counts of humans rather than percentages to help us figure things out. So for instance, if I change the format to this, assume you conduct breast cancer screening using mammography in a certain region, you know the following information about the women in this region. 10 out of every 1,000 women have breast cancer. Of those 10 women, 9 will test positive. Of the 900 without cancer, 89 will test positive. This gives us a better comparison rate. It lines the information better for us to say, oh, I should be comparing these, right? So 9 positive cases, 9 positive who have it, and 89 positive who don't. It just makes more sense to us. So navigating these conditional probabilities, when you're mucking around with percentages, they get all crisscrossed, right? Whereas if you use natural frequencies, you keep everything anchored. And the trick is, you can teach people to translate things between them. So at this same convention, taught gynecologists how to do that conversion from the percentages to actual natural frequencies. And on the left hand, you see the answers that I showed you before. On the right hand side, you see that a full 87% suddenly were able to get it. It's not that they were dumb, it's that they were just not primed. They didn't have the tools in their kit to quickly parse this stuff. So, this is all just to I like to pop into these cognitive questions here and there and talk about also why you might find the probability discussions kind of frustrating from time to time, because they are tricky to wield as a human cognitive agent. So, they are naturally confusing to our systems. For example, think about the COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of people's responses to it. It's really tricky to get over this conjunction of a bunch of low percent chance things, like low percent chance of contracting it in the first place, low percent chance of dying from it, low percent chance of spreading it. What's everybody worried about? Why are we fussing over all this? But it fails to account for this idea that 1% of 300 million would still be 3 million, right? I'm not giving any specific numbers there. I'm not saying like the percent of that is the death rate or anything. I don't know all the current statistics, but I'm just saying the base rate, the overall natural frequencies, they fall away because it's hard to communicate all this stuff. So we can use different kinds of language and structuring of the information, these natural frequencies, to make it easier for human systems to deal with it. All of this discussed, we're not going to be the ones modeling ourselves. I just wanted you to understand some things about cognition and probabilities. Who is pretty good at probabilities? Is computers. So they are very happy to deal with this kind of math. And as it turns out, we can get some pretty cool modeling going using probabilistic models. So, what do we mean by probabilistic modeling? Well, first, right up front, something to note, any probability is a model. So if models are, we've discussed before, models are small, reduced forms of the real world useful for predicting things, then yes, even a single probability is a model. So the probability of a tails being 0.5 is a model of coin flips. It's designed to help us understand coins. It helps us predict, well, it doesn't help us predict well in this case because it's an even shot, right? But it helps us predict what the possibilities are, right? So our goal with most of this type of modeling is to increase the complexity of these models. So not just one probability, but a whole bunch of different ones for different words and categories. I've already spoiled it, words. That will capture something more interesting than this random coin flip. We're going for language. So, probabilistic models of language. We can think of sentences and words, as you're hearing them right now, right, as events with probabilities. Think about the sentences flowing forward in time. So we can think about the probability of an entire sentence. So what are the odds that this sentence occurs at all? So we would be connecting all of these probabilities together. We can also model upcoming words, right? So which word is most likely to come after these ones? So the probability of likely given which word is most, right? So we've got the probability of multiple things all at once and the probability of one thing given several other things. Here we are back in conjunctive probability. Don't worry too much. We're good. Your brain is not set up for this, but we will ease in. So, sentence probabilities are useful in a broad sense to do interesting things like, say, evaluating translations. What are the odds that the words high winds tonight are going to occur compared to the words large winds tonight? One of these is never used. One of them is quite often used. So in a translation setting, even though those two words might be conflated in many languages, we can pick the one that makes more sense because it actually occurs. Speech, similar thing. So what are the odds that the sentence we're hearing here from an automated speech processor is I saw a van versus I saw of an? Those are both, they have a lot of phonemes in common. You might have a system get confused about those two. But ultimately, the system is going to pick the one on the left because that is something that humans can say, whereas the other one is something that makes no sense whatsoever. Might do it if you're, screwing on an art project or something, but not in normal speech, right? Also, spelling, spell checking. What are the odds of ambidextrous pitcher versus amphibious pitcher? Amphibious pitcher makes debut. I don't think he knows how to breathe underwater. So, shoot. So that's the idea. You can see how you might leverage understanding the probability of a sentence when trying to deal with processes in the world. Word probabilities, independently, individual words are a little different, but you might use it. You might see it in predictive text, which we use. It happens all the time. I try to turn mine off. Actually, it usually leads me astray. Honestly, maybe I just talk funny. So, which word has the highest probability given the previous words typed? So, what's the probability of headache given I have a? That's probably pretty common. Meeting given I have a. Okay, sure. Very common. Glockenspiel. It's not super common. I have a glockenspiel. That's a fine sentence, if you even know what a glockenspiel is, but it's, what is it for? That's not really likely to be something that you would suggest as the finishing word of that short sentence. So, that's the idea. That's kind of the overall goal of being able to model word probabilities and sentence probabilities. Now let's get into kind of how we do that. So, when we want to compute language probabilities, of words or whole sentences, how do we arrive at the probability of a word? Got to involve observed data, right? Something like weather. And what about a whole sentence? Maybe the probability of each word in the sentence, summing them all together somehow. These are kind of the questions that we'll try to pick at. First and foremost, yes, we do use observed data. We typically call this the corpus. So any language model is going to be built by taking observations of language from somewhere. The corpus is the set of natural language we will end up using to construct all of our models. The models have to look at something to build up whatever mathematical relationships they're trying to do. In this case, our probabilities. And these can be anything. They usually focus on a theme of some kind, but it all depends on what you're trying to model. If you're trying to get natural human language, you might go for, text message databases or something that may exist. Although I'm not sure a lot of people would have access to those, but like Facebook or Twitter, right? Something that has an open access to a lot of data that is normally naturally typed by people. Other things are like the complete works of Shakespeare. Maybe you want to make a Shakespearean model of language that can produce Shakespeare and can evaluate Shakespeareanness of a sentence. Or like every New York Times article, right? A little more neutral, middle of the road, not much tone, a lot of informational stuff, just general discourse about public events, right? So we consider the corpus as the observations for our model. So similar to weather, language models are going to use that corpus to determine the conditional probability of words. So how likely the events, the words, are given the conditions, the previous words. The more often words follow one another in the corpus, say they happen repeatedly, that two words happen together quite often, then their probability goes up in the language model. They become more likely, right? So let's talk about the basic idea of word probabilities. So the first probability you can do is how likely does any given word occur at all in your corpus, right? So the probability of colorless, right? What are the odds of that word occurring in any given position in the corpus, right? So you would do the count of the number of times colorless occurs divided by all the possible words that are in the language that you're using, or at least all the ones you find in the corpus. So again, you would sum all these probabilities up to 1. So here, probability of aardvark, probability of aardwolf, yeah. Sorry, there's a space there. Probability of Aaron, Abak, through colorless, all the way through Zulus. Those will all still add up to 1. So that's the idea. You can pick out how often does this one word occur in my corpus. But on top of that, we also want to chain them together, right? So this is the basic probability, but it says nothing about what occurs next to each other, right? It only says how often a word occurs at all, not together. So one of our goals is to chain words together. To do that, we use conditional probabilities. I touched on this a bit before, but it's the basic idea of what's the probability of an event given that another event has already occurred. What that comes down to, you would write it like this: probability of B given A. That's what that pipe means, that vertical. In a lot of places that means or, here it means given. So the probability of B and A divided by just the probability of A. Okay, so essentially we are the probability of both events happening reduced by the probability of the conditional situation, because we know that's already happened. So to get that, to get the probability of two events happening together, you will multiply their independent probabilities. For example, the odds of heads on a single flip is 1 out of 2, right? There's only one flip happening. There's only 2 possible outcomes, 1 out of 2. The odds of heads on 2 flips in a row, however, is going to be event 1 is 1 heads, event 2 is another heads, right? That's 1 out of 4. And I can show you how here. The heads case is only 1 of 4 possible outcomes. It could go heads tails, it could go tails heads, it could go tails tails. But what we're interested in is the odds of heads and heads, right? Moreover, this can get screwier if you're dealing with, say, a deck of cards. You might have to account for something going missing. So if you draw 2 cards of the same suit, you win this little game that we've made up here. Let's say you just drew a heart. What are the odds that you win after drawing the next card? At a glance, you kind of might guess somewhere still in the ballpark of 1 in 4, right? There's 4 suits, so what are the odds? But remember, you've removed one of the cards. So how do we trace this? Probability of the second heart given the first heart is going to equal the probability of the first heart, and then times, right, because we're doing both of those happening, and the probability of the second heart over just the probability of the first heart, because we know that's already happened. So 13 over 52 times 12 out of 51, right, because there's only 51 cards left, and we've removed one of the hearts, over 13 over 52, you get about 0.23. So what that's getting at is saying the probability of getting both of these in a row, or sorry, of just the second one, right? It's not both in a row in this case. This is the conditional part. This is the idea that I just want to know from here, from now, drawing this next card, what are my chances? We don't really consider the chances of the first card, because that's not what we're calculating right here. So to be very clear, this is the probability of this thing given that we know the first thing already happened. So I hope this can make sense of how we might use this in language. So the probability of the next word is going to be the probability of that word given other words that have occurred near it. So for example, the probability of green given colorless is going to be colorless and green over just colorless, right? So you don't have to focus too hard on these mathematical equations and like memorizing them. We're not going to really deal directly with them for the most part. We will construct things in ways that just these probabilities just happen. So no worries there. But it is, this probability is determined by how often these things will happen in the corpus. Okay. So how many words, though, should we include in this conditional? You could just say, oh, we'll just use the whole sentence, right? Use as many words as we can get. So say we're trying to predict this sentence at the top. Let's just use the whole sentence. So it would be something like the probability of the word sentence given, let's just use the whole altogether, right? The problem is, it turns out that individual sentences, whole sentences of things all in a row together, are super unlikely. in a probabilistic sense. It is very unlikely that those words will all occur together. Now, what does that mean for us? So what that means is your model is not going to be very general, other than the exact sentences in the corpus, if every single one of your probabilities you're constructing is based on a bunch of words, right? So probability of dog, given the quick brown fox jumped over the and lazy all having occurred, like, hey, that's going to get pretty good. We're going to get a pretty good match. And we're going to produce the word dog after these words have occurred. Heck yeah. Except that's not very general, because the odds of the times the odds of quick times the odds of brown, if you think about, if there's 1.3 million words in English, each one of these, okay, so 1 millionth, 1 billion, no, not billionth, trillionth, you're starting to see how these become very unlikely. And what that means is that your model becomes hyper-specific. You're building probabilities of things that are sort of known and not general. I hope to make sure that's clear as we keep going. So here's the idea. To avoid this, we meet our friend Markov. He comes up with this approximation. Consider the odds of any given word occurring after an entire sentence to be roughly equivalent to the odds of a word occurring after just 1 or 2 or 3 words. Okay, so after all, language is flowing. We don't need to know every word that came before to produce another. It's close enough, right? It's not accurate. It's not true that we can just throw away every word that came before the last one. But it adds this knob to tweak so that we can say, look, maybe I don't care about a perfect recollection of this sentence. I don't care about capturing in my model this exact sentence. Maybe all I care about is a couple of words back. So that's where we get into the idea of n-grams. N-grams are sets of words of size n that occur together in language, in our corpus, for example. Essentially, whatever we decide to set for n will determine how tightly bound our model is going to be to the sentences that it trained on. So a low n means a very general model. It's not going to produce the exact sentences, but the language it produces, it's not going to produce the exact sentences it saw, but it will try to produce things in a general capacity. The language it can produce is a little bit funky because it sort of lacks structure. It's not very good at capturing, long. It might waffle around a lot. I'll show you some examples in the future of that. Whereas a higher n, so say doing a lot of words together in the conditional, means more natural flowing language because it's more closely modeling, larger chunks of actual language. But it becomes more and more specific to the corpus. So, all of the idiosyncrasies of how Shakespeare talks will be captured by Shakespeare if you do it that way. So, or by your model if you are building it on a high n-gram. So, typically you see things in the realm of bigrams, trigrams, not a whole lot more than that, and not much less than either. So, n-grams. Some examples. So think of it this way. A unigram is sort of the null case of an n-gram. It's actually not really anything. It's just a single word. And all we're building up for the probability of an n-gram is, well, what's the probability of one word happening anywhere? No neighbors, we don't care. So if you're recording unigrams from your corpus, this is what you'll get. These are the probabilities you'll be able to build. If you're recording bigrams from your corpus, snatching out pairs of words, well, now we've recorded 2 words, and it's letting us look back 1 word for the conditional. So we can now ask the question of, what's the probability of word 2 given that word 1 has occurred? That's a pretty huge leap. From unigrams to bigrams, now we're actually chaining sentences together. That's good. That's useful. That's way more powerful than just doing words at random based on base frequencies. Trigrams is the same way as bigrams. If you're recording 3 words, you can look back 2. This isn't as big as a leap from as unigrams to bigrams, but the idea is, okay, well, maybe by capturing 2 words at a time, I'll be able to spread out a little more. I can capture more of the structure of the language, and to make my predictions a little bit better. Then we might get into quadra, tetra, 4grams, whatever you want to call these, record 4, look back 3. But again, remember that the more words that we have, the fewer examples we're going to find of that. And it's going to make it so that we're not actually we're only producing language that is very close to the source material. And that's fine, but again, models of language, we're trying to get at something general about language and not just the properties of the thing that we made our model look at. So n-grams have this nice sliding scale. So as our probabilities will incorporate more data, the larger the n, we see that the conditionals become less likely. So, for example, what are the odds of seeing the word computer on its own, right? Versus what are the odds of seeing the words computer language models together? It's way, way less likely to see that second set of words, and so it's way more specific to one domain, whereas computer is a quite general concept. So, how might we use this? General idea is you gather your n-grams for the chosen n size, right? So, for example, some bigrams, right? The quick brown fox, right? And then given a starting word, maybe you choose it at random, you're going to generate the next word using the probabilities of what exists in your corpus. This is how we chain, this is how we can produce language. We can also use these models in reverse and just say like, hey, here's some language, tell me the probabilities of these things, and I'll use that data for something later. But yeah, so here's an example. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. This is a very, 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 very small corpus, just so you know. That's just a single sentence, right? So our probabilities aren't going to be very interesting. But we can break it into its bigrams. We can say the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. So if brown is the word that we're on, get into that predictive text mindset, right? Brown being the first word, well, what do we think the probability is of the next thing? The only time brown occurs as a first word in the bigrams in this set is right before the word fox. So the probability of fox given brown is 1, whereas the probability of anything else given brown is going to be 0. Does that make sense? That's the idea that based on what we've observed over here, we can create these probabilities. Second case, given the as your prompt, there's a 50-50 shot at what the next word's going to be, because the happens twice and it has different words in each one. So the probability of after the word the happening in this corpus, given the probability of quick is 50%, and so is the probability of lazy. It's a toss-up. It's a coin toss. This is the basics. This is getting us into what this kind of modeling can do, and I'll give you a flavor taste of what we can see. So here is the output of some models of Shakespeare. At the top, we have unigrams. Essentially, again, this is producing words at random based on their base rate of occurrence in the complete works, right? To him swallowed confessed here both, which of save on trail for our eye device and wrote life have. Hill he late speaks, or a more to leg, less first you enter. That's nothing. We're lucky it even has sentence structure, which it kind of doesn't. It's just randomly placed periods. That is a pretty bad model of language. It's very general. It doesn't really super sound like Shakespeare, right? These things, maybe the exclamation points with or and some of these semicolons, but it's not very Shakespearean, and it also isn't very languagey. But it's still based on the corpus. It still is in that realm, right? 2 grams, bigrams, our friends. Well, here we go. Why dost stand forth thy canopy? Forsooth, he is this palpable hit, the King Henry. Live king, follow. What means, sir? I confess she? Then all sorts, he is trim, captain. Okay. I hope you see the difference. You hear the difference. Just in your brain, just like listening to those words. It's a different experience. You are getting the Shakespearean flavors, right? Because these things are connected to each other a pair of words at a time. They are not just randomly chosen from the whole corpus. They are said, oh, I'll look at each one of these in turn. Let's keep going. 3 grams, trigrams. Fly and will rid me these Fly and will rid me these news of price. Therefore the sadness of parting, as they say, 'tis done. This shall forbid it should be branded, if renown made it empty. It's still a bit gibberish, and it always will be, right? These language models, these things are not designed to produce perfect English outcomes, right? They are not going to produce intelligent emissions of language, right? But it's a little more Shakespearean, right? Because again, think about these in terms of 3s, fly and will. So the first word we create here is will, given fly and. Then we produce rid, given and will. Because the window that you're using to predict each word is growing a little bit, it becomes more and more like the source material. Let's do 4 grams. King Henry, what? I will go seek the traitor Gloucester. Exeunt some of the watch, a great banquet served in. It cannot be but so. Okay, now we're full on into Shakespearean sentences. They're still a little bit meaningless. They're still a little bit wobbly, but they're there, and they're doing... This is very close to Shakespearean language. These are almost full sentences, because, if you think about this, we are recreating more and more of the actual text that we've seen. So now we're looking at 3 words and saying, hey, what's the next word after these 3? Because those 3 words are less and less likely. We are more closely replicating exactly what was seen, as opposed to choosing things sort of broadly. So, I hope this introduces you well to the concepts of n-gram models of language and probabilistic models of language. And it's showing a way to capture probability of a given word occurring based on the words that came before it. It is not perfect, so a simple example of that is that language often has long-distance dependencies, right? The computer, which I had just put in the machine room on the 5th floor, are we going to choose is or are? It's a long-distance referent that this statistical model just cannot capture. These Markov chains cannot do that. That's fine. It's okay for them not to do that. That's not their job. But that is how they are weak in terms of the way they represent language. But they get us pretty far. They help us produce fairly convincing language and do so based on a small amount of data. Maybe not small, but they can. You could my stupid example of the quick brown fox sentence, it works, more or less. Scale it up, give it more data, it'll perform better, make something more fun. But yeah, that's the idea. So that brings us to the final thought. As always, language can be represented as a chain of statistical probabilities of words. It's not perfect, but it can produce interesting results. What else might you model using a Markov chain? All right, that's it. Thanks. Take care.